The sleek black limousine rolled slowly into Roosevelt High's parking lot, gliding past the rows of SUVs and rusted sedans like something out of a different world. The music pumping from speakers died out. Laughter halted mid-sentence. Heads turned as one toward the car door that began to open. A single silver heel touched the pavement. Then came a high-slit lavender satin gown, catching the light with every movement. A young Latina girl stepped out, skin glowing, curls cascading over her shoulders, earrings glinting like stars. Her expression? Unreadable. Luciana. Not a whisper, not a word. The same students who'd mocked her for being that broke girl from the Bronx were now transfixed. She didn't just arrive in a limo. She was wearing the very dress they refused to rent her just 3 weeks earlier, because someone like you might ruin it. Now, we go back in time and tell how Luciana got there. The lavender dress shimmered under the boutique's lights, each fleck of satin catching the gleam like a promise. Luciana stood before the full-length mirror, awestruck. For a moment, she didn't see the girl from the Bronx with frizzy curls and bakery-stained sneakers. She saw the version of herself she always imagined: tall, proud, graceful, unforgettable. The dress hugged her waist like it belonged to her, like it knew her. The slit ran just high enough to whisper confidence, not arrogance. Its off-shoulder cut revealed her collarbones, and she could already imagine the silver earrings her mother kept hidden in an old jewelry box, waiting for a special day. Maybe prom was that day. She turned slightly. Then again, she didn't want to take it off. "Excuse me?" Luciana called out, her voice catching slightly. "I think I found the one." The sales associate, a thin woman with sleek blonde hair, manicured nails, and a name tag that read Morgan, glanced up from her phone. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly as they flicked from Luciana's face to her shoes, then to the brown leather wallet she held awkwardly in both hands. "You'd like to rent that one?" Morgan asked, stepping forward with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Luciana nodded. "Yes, I have the deposit ready today. I can pay the rest by Friday. I've been working weekends at Valerio's bakery." There was a pause. Morgan leaned in slightly, her fingers brushing the dress's hem. Then, suddenly, she stepped back, shaking her head as if something just clicked. "Oh no, sweetie," she said, "I'm afraid this dress is no longer available. It's been reserved." Luciana blinked. "Reserved?" Morgan nodded curtly and reached behind Luciana, gently tugging at the fabric as if already reclaiming it. "But, you just pulled it off the rack for me. I saw you do it." Morgan's lips twitched. "I must have made a mistake. Our system isn't always up to date. This gown is very popular." Luciana looked around. No one else was shopping. The boutique was practically empty. Her reflection caught her gaze again. She looked like she belonged in that dress. It was perfect. "Do you have anything similar?" she asked, trying to stay composed. Morgan's tone shifted, less polished now. "Let me be honest with you. Our couture rentals are for certain clients. Young women who understand the care these garments require. And this dress? It's not a good fit for everyone." Luciana stared at her. The words were soft, but their meaning was sharp. "Not everyone. Not someone like you." She felt the weight of her surroundings crash down all at once. The spotless white tile beneath her feet. The perfume that clung to every silk curtain. The silence. She slipped behind the curtain and changed back into her jeans and sweatshirt. The magic dissipated as quickly as it had arrived. As she walked out, Morgan offered a chirpy, "Good luck finding something else." Luciana didn't look back. Outside, the sky was beginning to gray, thick clouds rolling in over the city like bruises. Luciana walked toward the subway, her earbuds in but music off. The sounds of New York buzzed around her, impatient horns, the hiss of buses, a man yelling about discounted umbrellas on the corner. She barely registered any of it. It wasn't about the dress anymore. It was about how easy it was for someone to decide she didn't deserve it. How quickly the world could shrink a girl like her down to nothing with a few well-placed smiles and phrases like, "certain clients." She thought of her mother, Carmen, hunched over the sewing machine at night, surrounded by pins and old fabric scraps, trying to make ends meet after yet another customer ghosted her over a $30 repair job. She thought of all the weekends she had woken up at 4 a.m. to frost cakes and stack boxes at the bakery. saving every tip in a small envelope labeled prom. And all of it, every dollar, every tired morning, had just been dismissed like lint on silk. Her eyes burned, but she refused to cry on the train. She would not give them that. 2. Back in the Bronx, the apartment she shared with her mother was warm with the smell of beans, cilantro, and freshly steamed rice. Her mom was humming along to an old Celia Cruz song as she stirred a pot, a worn apron tied around her waist. She looked up as Luciana stepped in. "You're early. Didn't you want to try a few places today?" Luciana forced a smile and dropped her bag. "Didn't work out." Carmen studied her for a second, reading more in her face than Luciana wanted to share. "They turned you away?" Luciana nodded, pulling off her sneakers. "Said it was reserved." "Was it?" "No." Carmen let out a long sigh. "Come sit. Eat something." Luciana sank into the kitchen chair. Carmen didn't say anything else, but her silence was weighted. She moved around the kitchen with practiced grace, pouring a bowl of caldo and setting it in front of her daughter. For a while, they ate quietly, the only sounds being the soft clink of spoons against bowls and a distant siren outside. Finally, Carmen sat down across from her. "Mija," she said gently, "maybe it's time we stop waiting for people to say yes." Luciana looked up. "What do you mean?" Carmen stood, walked to the cupboard, and pulled out an old, faded folder. She opened it, revealing pencil sketches and fabric notes, designs Luciana had drawn years ago. Some still in marker, some carefully shaded with color. One sketch showed a gown, bold lines, sharp shoulders, a side slit, modern, powerful. "You remember this one?" Carmen asked. "I drew that when I was 12. "Well," Carmen said, smiling for the first time that evening, "your tia Rosa in Miami remembers it, too. I sent her this last week. She already started working on it." Luciana's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "She's making my design?" "Our design," Carmen corrected. "She said she'll have it ready in 2 weeks. But we'll need to make it yours. That means fittings, adjustments, magic." Luciana stared at her mother, the exhaustion in her chest giving way to something unfamiliar, hope. "You think we can really pull it off?" she asked. Carmen smiled. "Baby, we were never going to fit into their world. So let's build our own." The pencil scratched softly across the page, forming lines Luciana hadn't drawn in years. Not since middle school art class. Not since she used to imagine herself designing gowns on runways instead of folding napkins at Valerio's bakery. But now the silence of the apartment was filled with quiet determination. Her sketchbook, dusty from disuse, lay open on the kitchen table beside her mother's pincushion and a roll of measuring tape. She flipped between old pages of childhood designs and fresh outlines she drew now. Lines bolder, sharper, more deliberate. There was a fire building inside her again. Carmen watched from the sofa, sipping cinnamon tea and resisting the urge to interrupt. She recognized that look in her daughter's eyes. It was the same one her late husband used to get when working on a new construction blueprint. Back when dreams didn't come with expiration dates. Luciana finally held up the sketch and exhaled. "This is the one." The gown was modern, elegant, a long, flowing silhouette with asymmetrical shoulders, a fitted bodice that echoed confidence, and a slit that rose just high enough to make the point. She was no one's background character. And she didn't need permission. Carmen rose from the couch and leaned in to examine the drawing. She nodded. "Your father would have said it has presence." Luciana smiled faintly, her eyes glinting with something more than nostalgia. "Let's make it real." The following week passed like a storm in slow motion. Every evening after work and school, Luciana and her mom transformed their tiny apartment into a makeshift design studio. The living room became a fitting room. The ironing board doubled as a cutting table. They crafted a dress form from broom handles, stacked books, and 3 rolls of duct tape wrapped around one of Luciana's hoodies stuffed with towels. Over video call, Tia Rosa from Miami, graying hair tied back, thick glasses perched on her nose, guided them through each step. She was once an apprentice for a fashion house in Havana before immigrating to the U.S., but had since shifted to small neighborhood orders and quinceañera gowns. Still, her eye for form and fabric hadn't dulled. "I want to get this right," she told Luciana one evening. "Not because they didn't believe in you, but because you do. On Friday afternoon, the doorbell rang. A narrow box wrapped in brown butcher paper sat on the welcome mat. Luciana gasped. Inside was the half-finished bodice, deep lavender with metallic threadwork along the neckline. It shimmered even in the dull apartment light. Carefully folded beneath it was a handwritten note from Tia Rosa. This dress already knows who it belongs to. You just have to step into it. Luciana pressed the note to her chest. Weekends were a blur of thread, fabric scraps, and whispered laughter. They visited a fabric wholesaler downtown, where Luciana learned to negotiate with firm eyes and silent math. Carmen bartered with vendors in Spanish, securing zippers and lining and tiny glass beads for a quarter the boutique price. In the evenings, Luciana practiced walking in heels borrowed from her cousin. She watched old red carpet footage on YouTube and studied the way women held themselves like armor. Shoulders back, chin high, eyes forward. One evening, as Carmen pinned a piece of fabric to Luciana's side, she asked quietly, "What if they don't see you?" Luciana turned toward her mother. "They'll see me." She didn't say it with anger. She said it with certainty. But even as the gown took shape, so did the whispers. At school, she overheard girls in the hallway laughing about some charity case prom dress project. On Instagram, a photo from Midtown Gowns showed another girl wearing the dress Luciana had tried on, the one she'd been denied. The caption read, "A perfect match for a perfect client." Luciana stared at the screen for a long time before locking her phone and going back to her sketchbook. She didn't need their version of perfect. She needed her own. One night, while hand-stitching the waist seam, Carmen paused and looked at her daughter. "You know," she said, "when I came to this country, I only packed one thing just for me. It wasn't clothes or photos. It was a measuring tape. I thought, maybe someday, I'd have my own little shop. Make people feel beautiful." Luciana looked at her mother. Then at the dress between them, this creation held together by thread. Memory. And love. "Well," Luciana whispered, "you just did." As the final week before prom began, the dress was nearly complete. The last step was attaching the bodice to the skirt, securing everything into a final silhouette that fit her not just in size, but in identity. Luciana tried it on late one night. She turned toward the mirror. She didn't recognize the girl staring back. Not because she looked different, but because she finally looked like herself. Monday morning arrived with little fanfare. Luciana stood in front of her cracked bathroom mirror, brushing her hair back into a sleek low ponytail. No makeup, no earrings, just her usual hoodie, jeans, and a small pair of worn sneakers she'd scrubbed clean the night before. On the outside, she looked like every other Monday version of herself. But inside, something had changed. She walked down the hallway of Roosevelt High with steady steps. Head up, not stiff or haughty, just still. Like she carried something important that couldn't be dropped. Confidence. Direction. Not the kind people fake for selfies, but the quiet kind that's built from glue guns, seam rippers, and too many late nights threading a needle with swollen fingers. A couple of students glanced up from their phones. One girl, Jessica Marin, known for her perfect TikTok hair flips, raised an eyebrow at Luciana as she passed by. Luciana didn't react. She no longer needed to. She was almost to her locker when she heard it. "Luciana." The voice was familiar. She stopped, turned. Ryan Caldwell, basketball captain, honor student, owner of the most yearbook votes for most likely to marry rich, stood near the vending machines. He wore a gray Roosevelt hoodie and held a protein bar in one hand. His face was caught somewhere between sheepish and sincere. Luciana gave a nod. Hey, he said, stepping forward. "Can I talk to you for a sec?" She shrugged. Neutral. "Sure." He scratched the back of his neck like he didn't quite know how to start. "So, I saw you at Midtown Gowns a few weeks ago." Luciana tensed. "I was there with my cousin. For her dress. I saw you try on that purple gown." She didn't answer, just waited. Ryan continued, slower. "I also heard what happened with the store." Luciana's arms crossed instinctively. "What exactly did you hear?" He hesitated. "That they said the dress was reserved. But it wasn't. That they didn't let you rent it." She raised an eyebrow. "And?" He shuffled his feet. "That was messed up." Luciana tilted her head. "It was," she said simply. But it's done. He opened his mouth to say more, then paused. I just wanted to say, you didn't deserve that. And if there's anything I can do. Luciana smiled, but not the kind of smile that invited rescue. It was the kind of smile that said, I already did it without you. Thanks, Ryan, but I'm good. He blinked, visibly surprised. I heard you might not be going to prom. He said quickly, maybe hoping to pivot. Who said that? He looked caught. People. I am, Luciana replied. Going, I mean, to prom? Yes. There was a beat of silence. Ryan seemed to process that. Like maybe he had thought she would skip it, or fade away, or disappear like a subplot no one finishes. But Luciana wasn't disappearing. She was showing up, big, as she turned back toward her locker. Ryan called after her one last time. You look different, by the way. She glanced over her shoulder. Maybe you're just seeing me clearly for the first time. Her locker door creaked open. She was reaching for her history book when something fluttered to the floor. An envelope, unmarked. Luciana frowned and picked it up, turning it over in her hands. It wasn't one of the school-issued prom reminders, no printing. No label, no logo, just a plain cream envelope, sealed with a small silver sticker shaped like a star. She opened it cautiously. Inside was a folded card with clean, block-printed handwriting. You don't need permission to be unforgettable. Just in case you forgot. You already are. I'll see you at prom. Her heartbeat caught. There was no name, no return address, just the initial A. She read the note again. Then again. Someone had left it there intentionally. Someone who knew. Someone who had seen past the noise and looked at her like she wasn't invisible. And unlike the stares she got from store clerks or classmates, this felt sincere. Her first instinct was suspicion. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone wanted to humiliate her. But there was no cruelty in the words. No mocking tone. Just calm, quiet encouragement. The kind her father used to give her when he'd tape her art to the fridge. She tucked the note into her backpack and made her way to class, trying not to reread it in her head too many times. But something inside her had shifted again. If she was being watched, let them watch. She had nothing to hide. Later that night, as she and her mother reviewed the hemline on the now almost complete dress, Luciana told her about the letter. Carmen raised an eyebrow. Someone wrote to you anonymously? Luciana nodded, then pulled the card from her backpack and handed it over. Carmen read it slowly, then smiled. Do you believe it? Luciana paused. Then, yeah, I think I do. Her mother handed it back. Then you don't need to know who it is. Not yet. Luciana laughed. That's incredibly unhelpful, Mom. But Carmen just winked. Some things, mija, are better revealed under good lighting and the right pair of shoes. By Wednesday evening, the dress was no longer a collection of fabric and hope. It was whole. Luciana stood in the center of the living room, barefoot, arms slightly raised as Carmen zipped up the back. The sound of the zipper sliding into place was strangely sacred, like closing the final page of a chapter they had rewritten together. Don't move, Carmen whispered, circling her daughter like an artist surveying her sculpture. Mira esto? The dress shimmered in the apartment's warm yellow light. It was unlike anything from a boutique, because it wasn't designed to impress. It was built to belong, to Luciana, to her shape, her spirit, her history. The lavender satin hugged her body with precision, the bodice stitched with hidden boning for structure. At the waist, a narrow silver ribbon cinched just enough to draw the eye. The slit on the left leg rose perfectly, ending mid-thigh, just enough to say, I am unafraid. Along the neckline, Tia Rose's final touch, a delicate trim of hand-beaded stars, sparkled subtly. A constellation of intention. Luciana turned slowly toward the mirror propped against the bookshelf. Her breath caught. She didn't look transformed. She looked returned. Returned to the version of herself that had been waiting patiently, through humiliation, through self-doubt, through the years spent shrinking to fit in rooms that never wanted her full size. Mom, she whispered. Carmen stepped back, blinking fast. I know. They stood together, silently, before the mirror. 2 generations, 2 dreams stitched into a single garment. An hour later, while Luciana carefully laid the dress across the back of the sofa, Carmen's phone buzzed. She answered in Spanish, confused at first. Then her eyes widened. She handed the phone to Luciana. "It's for you." Luciana hesitated. "Who is it?" She said she's a seamstress. "From the Lower East Side. Her niece sent her a picture of your sketches." Luciana picked up the phone cautiously. "Hello?" A warm voice came through. "Hola, Luciana. My name is Elena Rivas. I run a small custom dress shop near Delancey Street. Someone posted one of your designs online, your cousin. Maybe? It came across my feed. I just wanted to say, it's beautiful. Elegant. It reminds me of early Carolina Herrera. But with Bronx fire." Luciana blushed, unsure what to say. "I was wondering," Elena continued, "would you ever consider interning with me this summer? I can't pay much, but I can teach you how to cut fabric like a Parisienne." Luciana looked at her mother in disbelief. Carmen smiled, already nodding before her daughter could say a word. I'd love that," Luciana said. "Really? Well, you let me know after prom." Elena said, "Walk like you mean it, mija." That night, Luciana couldn't sleep. She sat at the windowsill, dress safely hanging behind the closet door, and stared out at the fire escapes and flickering street lamps. Down the street, someone was playing a slow reggaeton ballad, and the rhythm matched the beat of her thoughts. What if she wasn't an accident in this world? What if she was the beginning of something? Her phone buzzed. A new notification. Her cousin Anna had posted a photo of the dresses beating on her story with the caption, "My cousin's prom gown is better than whatever 3K boutique trash y'all paid for. Handmade. From scratch. Talent greater than money." Luciana laughed, shaking her head. Then another ping. A message request. From someone named at Urban Latin Style, a small fashion blog based in New Jersey. "Is this your original design? Would love to feature it in our Voices from the Boroughs piece next month." Luciana blinked. Then another one. And another. She opened her inbox to find 5 new DMs and a notification that her name had been tagged in a tweet. Someone had screenshotted Anna's post and written, "Who is this girl? We need to protect her at all costs." Luciana set the phone down, stunned. For so long, she had been invisible. Now, suddenly, people wanted to see her. At school the next day, a few students eyed her with a new kind of curiosity. Not the mocking kind. The kind that asked, "How did we miss this before?" Even Jessica Marin passed by her locker and offered a curt, "Cute hair today." Luciana didn't know whether to laugh or check the sky for signs of apocalypse. Ryan approached her again between third and fourth period. "I meant what I said," he told her. "You're kind of lighting up the whole school right now." Luciana looked him in the eye. "I didn't do it for them." "I know," he said. "That's probably why it's working." By Friday, prom fever had taken over Roosevelt High. Students swapped rumors about the DJ, the decorations, the secret prom queen ballot. Luciana tried to stay grounded. She didn't need a crown. She didn't need the spotlight. She just wanted one thing: to walk into that ballroom and feel like she hadn't been edited out of the story. She returned home that evening to find a white envelope tucked into the apartment mailbox. No return address. Inside was a printed card. Limousine confirmed. Pickup at 6:45 p.m. You bring the fire. Javi. Luciana stared at the message. She looked up at the sky. Pink and purple melting into night. Tomorrow was prom. The limousine rolled to a smooth stop just outside Roosevelt High's main entrance. Its black frame gleaming beneath the string lights zigzagging across the parking lot. Outside, laughter, music, and the buzz of students hyped for the night blurred into a hum of energy. But inside the car, Luciana sat in stillness, letting herself breathe. The driver, Javi, a stocky man in his 50s with thick glasses and an easy grin, turned around and gave her a thumbs up. "You sure you don't want me to roll out a red carpet?" he teased. Luciana laughed softly. "Nah, the street's good enough." He studied her for a moment, then said, "Your dad would have been proud, kiddo." Luciana nodded. She didn't trust herself to speak. Her fingers lightly traced the seam of her dress, each bead a prayer. Each stitch a step closer to becoming who she was always meant to be. The door handle clicked. Her heart thumped once, then again. Luciana stepped out into the night. For a second, no one noticed. Then someone looked, and everything stopped. The line of students leading toward the prom venue froze mid-sentence. Mid-laugh, mid-photo. Heads turned. Mouths parted slightly. A full second passed before anyone breathed. Luciana emerged in full, her lavender gown flowing like poured light. The slit moving with each step. The silver beadwork shimmering like distant stars. Jessica Marin, who had spent nearly $800 on a custom blush-toned dress from L.A., whispered. "Who is that?" Her best friend replied, wide-eyed. "Luciana." No one said a word after that. Luciana's heels clicked softly on the pavement as she walked past the crowd. She didn't rush. She didn't strut. She just moved with presence, as if the world had to adapt to her rhythm now. One boy near the entrance fumbled his phone. Another tried to whisper something but forgot the words halfway through. Teachers stood by the entrance arch, momentarily distracted from their check-in lists. Luciana passed by Ryan Caldwell, who stood near the fountain with his friends. His jaw twitched as he stepped forward. "Luciana," he said, voice low. She stopped. He stared at her, stunned. "You look, he exhaled. "You look incredible." Luciana tilted her head. "Thanks. You didn't tell anyone," he said. "You just showed up." "That's kind of the point," she replied. He looked down, then back at her. "If you don't have a date." "I do," she said, cutting him off gently. "Me." He blinked, processing that. Luciana smiled, not unkindly. "I hope you have a good night, Ryan." And then she walked on. Inside the gym, Prom had transformed. String lights glowed overhead like a canopy of stars. A giant disco ball spun in the center, scattering flecks of light onto sequin dresses and pastel tuxedos. The DJ dropped beats like clockwork, the floor vibrating with bass and glittery energy. As Luciana entered, the crowd parted instinctively. She didn't need a spotlight. She was one. The photographer near the entrance quickly snapped a few candid shots, then stopped her. "Would you mind? Just one more? That dress, it's unreal." Luciana turned toward the camera, chin raised. Click. A flash of silver. The room didn't erupt in applause. It didn't have to. Respect sat in silence. And tonight, it wore lavender. As the night moved on, Luciana drifted from table to table. She wasn't trying to make a statement. She wasn't trying to reclaim anything. She just wanted to dance. And when the right track played, a Latin mix of old-school reggaeton and modern pop, she danced. With friends, with strangers, alone, the room pulsed with warmth and music. And she moved with it like she belonged in the center of every beat. A teacher she barely knew came up and said, "You remind me of my wife on our wedding day. That same look in your eyes." Luciana smiled. "Thank you." A freshman girl whispered, "I hope I look like you when I'm a senior." Luciana knelt down and fixed the girl's necklace. "You already do. You just don't see it yet." Around 10:30 p.m., Luciana stepped outside for air. The gym had grown too hot. The music too thick. The sky above was velvet dark. The stars just faint pinholes in the New York haze. She walked to the edge of the courtyard, heels in one hand, and looked up. The wind pulled gently at her hair. She closed her eyes and let the moment sink in. For the first time in a long time, she felt weightless. She felt seen, not because of a dress, or a limo, or even the anonymous note, but because for the first time in her life, Luciana had walked into a space the world told her she couldn't enter. And didn't flinch. Behind her, someone cleared their throat. She turned. It was Ms. Ellison, the head of the English department. "I just wanted to say," the teacher said, "I've watched you this year. You always kept your head down. Worked hard. Never asked for much." Luciana nodded slowly. "Well," Ms. Ellison added, "maybe you should start asking." Luciana tilted her head. "For what?" "For everything," she replied. "Scholarships, recommendations, internships, the world, whatever you want. Ask for it. Demand it." Luciana's throat tightened. "I've got an old friend at the School of Visual Arts," Ms. Ellison added, scribbling something on a scrap of paper. "Send her your portfolio. Tell her I sent you." Luciana took the paper. "Thank you." Ms. Ellison smiled. "You already earned it." As she turned back to the gym, a new song began playing, something bold, high energy, a Latin beat pulsing through the open doors. Luciana slipped her heels back on. She walked in, and this time, people didn't fall silent. They cheered. The lights dimmed suddenly. Luciana stood at the edge of the dance floor, catching her breath. Sweat clung to her collarbone. But she didn't care. Her curls had begun to frizz from the heat, and her makeup had softened into something more human, lived in. Radiant, real. Ladies and gentlemen, a voice echoed through the speakers. It's time to announce your 2025 prom court. A chorus of cheers rose up from the crowd. Luciana's stomach tightened, not out of expectation, but out of habit. These weren't spaces built for girls like her. She had never once imagined hearing her name in the middle of that kind of announcement. Still, something about the way people had watched her tonight, not with pity or ridicule, but something closer to admiration, made the moment feel different. A tall senior in a pink tuxedo jacket stepped onto the makeshift stage. Holding a clipboard, the DJ lowered the music to a slow instrumental. Our nominees for prom queen, he announced, as voted by the student body. The list began. Jessica Marin, Madison Blake, Layla Al-Khatib. A pause. And, a surprise write-in nomination? Whispers swept across the room. The announcer blinked, clearly surprised. Luciana Reyes. Time froze. Luciana didn't move. She looked around, sure someone would laugh, but they didn't. Heads turned toward her. A few people clapped. One girl near the punch bowl raised her glass. Carmen's words echoed in Luciana's mind. You don't need their invitation. Walk in like you already belong. The pink tux announcer shrugged and smiled. Hey, democracy's alive and well. Laughter rippled through the crowd, but it wasn't cruel. It was warm, surprised, curious. Luciana took one small step back, then forward again. She wasn't nervous. She was deciding. She remembered every time she'd been passed over, for honors, for speaking roles, for recognition. She remembered the boutique saleswoman who decided she didn't fit the client list. The classmates who thought being invisible was her natural state. And now, with a paper crown on the line, they were clapping? Her name on the list didn't feel like validation. It felt like irony. She took another breath. She could walk up there. She could play the role. Smile, wave, pretend she dreamed of this moment. But the truth was, she hadn't. She had dreamed of something much bigger. The announcer looked toward her again. Luciana, you want to come up? Luciana smiled, then shook her head. Thank you, she called out clearly. But I'm good. The entire gym went still. A beat. Then, unexpectedly, applause broke out. It started from the corner, someone clapping slow and steady. Then more, then louder. A few people whistled. Someone shouted, Yes, Queen. Another yelled, Let her live. Luciana curtsied theatrically. The crowd laughed. The boy in the tux chuckled into the mic. Respect. We love a graceful exit. As the DJ turned the music back up, people returned to dancing. But now, the vibe had changed. Something had shifted in the air. Luciana hadn't claimed the crown. She had rejected it, and somehow, that had made her royalty. She made her way back to the dance floor, greeted by fist bumps, high fives, and even a hug from someone she barely knew. It was strange and sweet. At the refreshment table, a girl from sophomore year, Juliet, who had once made fun of her shoes, offered her a bottle of water. Hey, I just wanted to say, that was badass. Luciana smiled. Thanks. I voted for you, Juliet added, just so you know. Luciana blinked. Wait, you did? Juliet nodded. Yeah, you made that dress, right? Everyone was talking about it this week. You earned that vote. Luciana looked down at her dress, suddenly seeing it from outside herself. Not as a shield, not as a weapon, but as art. Outside the gym, a soft drizzle had begun falling. The glass windows blurred with rain, casting soft reflections onto the dance floor. It was nearly midnight, but Luciana felt wide awake, energized, like something had cracked open inside her and flooded the room with light. She walked toward the exit, heels in hand again, and leaned against the hallway wall. She could hear the muffled bass still pulsing inside. But out here, it was quiet, peaceful. Footsteps approached. It was Ryan. He stood a few feet away, rubbing the back of his neck. So, that was pretty epic. Luciana glanced sideways. Not exactly what you expected. He gave a small laugh. Honestly, no. But I'm glad you did it. You owned it. She studied him. He wasn't mocking, just honest. You don't have to say that, she replied. I know, he said. That's why I'm saying it. They stood there for a few moments in comfortable silence. Then he asked, You heading out soon? Luciana nodded. Probably. Got a big day tomorrow. Doing what? She smiled. Starting something. Back at home, Carmen was waiting with a mug of tea and a folded blanket. How was it? She asked. Luciana sank into the couch and sighed. Everything I needed it to be. And more. She pulled out the silver-stitched envelope she'd tucked in her purse. I didn't win, she said, but I think that was the point. Carmen grinned. Sometimes not needing the crown is the win. They sat in silence, sipping tea as the dress hung nearby like a quiet witness. Luciana stared at it, and then an idea struck. She turned to her mother. What if we didn't stop here? Carmen raised an eyebrow. I mean it, Luciana said. What if this is just the beginning? The sky over the Bronx was still the soft blue of early morning when Luciana flipped open her sketchbook. She was seated at the kitchen table, legs curled beneath her, wrapped in an oversized hoodie, her prom dress hanging like royalty on the curtain rod behind her. It wasn't even 7 a.m., but she couldn't sleep. Not after last night. Prom had ended with no crown, no date, no dramatic moment of recognition. And yet, it felt like a coronation. Not from others. From herself. Luciana picked up a pencil and started sketching. Not a gown this time. A jacket, cropped, asymmetrical, with lavender stitching on a midnight base. Then another design. A pantsuit with flowing cuffs. Sharp, clean, purposeful. The page filled like a flood. By the time Carmen entered the kitchen in her slippers, rubbing her eyes and yawning, Luciana had 3 pages filled. You're up early, her mother mumbled. I never really went to sleep, Luciana replied, still sketching. Carmen looked over her shoulder, taking in the designs. You planning a whole collection now? Luciana didn't answer right away. Then, softly, maybe. Carmen put on the kettle, then turned back. You're serious? Luciana nodded. Prom was never the goal. It was the spark. That afternoon, she took the subway downtown to meet with Elena Rivas, the seamstress who had called after seeing her sketches online. Elena's shop was nestled between a laundromat and a Puerto Rican cafe. Its window display modest. A few mannequins in embroidered blouses and vintage dresses. But inside, it smelled like thread and ambition. Bolts of fabric lined the walls, and spools of colorful thread hung like ornaments. You must be Luciana, Elena said, stepping out from behind a sewing machine. She was tall, in her 60s, with silver streaks in her braid and calloused hands that moved like they'd been dancing with fabric all their lives. I brought my sketches, Luciana said, nervous. Elena waved that off. Sit, we'll talk first, sketches later. They spoke for nearly an hour. About design, craftsmanship, the politics of clothing. Elena told stories of making protest banners in her 20s. Of learning to sew because her abuela didn't believe in buying dresses when you had fingers and fabric. Finally, Elena reached across the table. You have hands like a designer and a heart like a storyteller. I'll teach you what I can, if you're serious. Luciana didn't even blink. I'm all in. That night, Luciana opened her old Instagram account, the one she barely used, and wiped it clean. She uploaded one photo, a close-up of the beading on her prom dress. The lavender satin catching the light in a way that felt like magic. She captioned it, handmade, designed in the Bronx. This is only the beginning. #Bronx built #Latina designer #Luciana Reyes. She didn't expect much, but by midnight, the post had over 700 likes. By morning, 2.000. Within a week, her DMs were full. People from school, people from other boroughs. One girl from Queens wrote, I've never seen someone who looks like me in fashion. Can I wear something you designed for graduation? Luciana read that message 3 times before responding. Yes. I'll design you something bold. She sat with Carmen that evening, scrolling through the comments. I don't even know how to price things. Her mom looked at her. Start with value, not just yours, but theirs. Luciana nodded. She wasn't ready to open a shop, but she was ready to open a door. Elena gave her a small workspace in the back of the shop. A sewing machine, a drawer of thread, a corner of a cutting table. It was tight, cramped, sometimes overheated. But to Luciana, it felt like Paris. She learned fast. She ripped seams and re-stitched them. Burned her fingertips more than once. Cried in frustration when a sleeve wouldn't drape right. Laughed out loud when a lining finally fell perfectly. In the afternoons, she'd return home with hands smelling like muslin and mind buzzing with ideas. She began reworking thrifted jackets and upcycling dresses from donation bins, photographing them on friends in alleyways and rooftops, posting the results with bold captions. People noticed. One afternoon, as Luciana adjusted the collar on her friend Anna's shoulders during a photo shoot, her phone buzzed. An email. Subject: Fashion Forward Youth Grant, application accepted. She opened it. Luciana Reyes. Congratulations, you've been selected as a finalist for the Fashion Forward Youth Grant, a program dedicated to nurturing underrepresented high school designers. You will present your original piece in our showcase this July in Soho. We look forward to meeting you. Her breath caught. She had submitted weeks ago on a whim, a few photos. One sketch, a short essay about her prom dress. She never thought she'd be chosen. Anna, she shouted. They picked me. Anna shrieked. Girl, I told you. Luciana stared at the message. Soho. Showcase. Finalist. But just as excitement surged, so did fear. Could she compete with private art school kids? Industry-connected interns? She didn't have a studio, or expensive fabric, or a fashion pedigree. All she had was thread, and fire, and Bronx grit. That night, Luciana lay in bed, the city humming beyond the window, the moonlight casting long shadows on the floor. She pulled the silver envelope from her drawer, the anonymous note from prom. She'd kept it, tucked between pages of her sketchbook. You don't need permission to be unforgettable. She smiled. Maybe she didn't. Luciana had never seen Soho this quiet. It was early morning, not the crowded brunch hour when influencers flooded sidewalks with outfit of the day poses, but the hush of anticipation. The kind that wrapped around galleries like mist. Carmen walked beside her, carrying a small garment bag, her eyes sweeping the wide windows and brick buildings with pride and nervous energy. They stopped in front of a tall white door. A simple sign taped to the glass read, Fashion Forward Youth Showcase Finalist Check-in. 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Welcome to the future of fashion. Luciana exhaled. She hadn't slept much. Her mind had rehearsed every possible disaster, the hem unraveling, the mannequin falling, someone asking what atelier she trained at and laughing when she said, kitchen table. You ready? Carmen asked gently. Luciana looked down at her sketchpad, then up at the door. No, she said, but I'm going in anyway. The space inside was minimalist. Gallery white and echoing with polished concrete floors. Mannequins stood on sleek pedestals spaced carefully apart, each one draped in an original piece by one of the 10 finalists. The lighting was surgical, every stitch, every pleat, every imperfection would be visible. Luciana was the 7th to arrive. A woman with a headset and tablet greeted her. Name? Luciana Reyes. The woman nodded, scrolled, then smiled. Ah, yes, Bronx-based. We loved your prom essay. You'll be set up on pedestal 6. Luciana followed an assistant toward her station. There, a bare mannequin awaited her under a focused beam of soft light. She unzipped the garment bag. Inside was the piece, a reinvention of her prom dress, not a replica, but a declaration, midnight black instead of lavender. A plunging neckline offset by structured shoulders. A skirt that flowed in pleats like pages from a storybook. Trimmed in hand-sewn silver thread that sparkled with motion. On the inner lining, stitched in subtle cursive, from the Bronx. With fire, Carmen helped her dress the mannequin. Smoothing the fabric, pinning it just right, checking every seam twice. By the time they stepped back, Luciana saw it. Not just a dress, but an identity. Not borrowed. Built. Other contestants trickled in. Some had parents. Others had assistants. A girl named Avery wore a vintage Gucci belt and spoke confidently about her family's summer home in Montauk. Another, Devon, had already interned with a designer Luciana followed obsessively on Instagram. They eyed her piece. Some nodded politely. Others said nothing. Luciana didn't mind. Not anymore. She had walked into rooms that tried to shrink her before. Now, she took up space deliberately. At 11 a.m., The judges arrived. 3 in total: a designer, a magazine editor, a professor from FIT. They moved from pedestal to pedestal, asking questions, jotting notes, murmuring among themselves. Luciana watched them carefully, stomach fluttering, hands clasped tightly in front of her. Finally, they reached hers. The editor, a tall woman in structured white linen and a clipboard clutched like a weapon, stopped in front of the piece and blinked. She stepped closer, ran her hand just inches from the embroidery. "What inspired this?" she asked. Luciana took a breath. "Being overlooked," she said. The editor raised an eyebrow. "I wanted to design something that says, 'You missed me once, you won't miss me again.'" The professor gave a slight, approving nod. "And the stitching on the inside?" the designer asked. "Is that a message?" Luciana nodded. "It's a reminder that where you come from doesn't make you smaller. It makes you stronger." There was a pause. Then the editor said, softly, "Where did you learn to sew like that?" Luciana smiled. "From my mother, and my aunt, and my neighborhood." They moved on. Luciana stood still, trying not to let her knees buckle. Carmen squeezed her shoulder. "You did perfect." "No," Luciana whispered. "I did honest." When the showcase opened to the public, the space filled quickly. Fashion students, journalists, local designers, people with expensive shoes and tired eyes. But some looked just like her. A mother and daughter from Harlem stopped to stare at her piece. The daughter, no older than 13, whispered, "It's like a warrior dress." Luciana knelt beside her. "Do you like to draw?" The girl nodded shyly. "Good," Luciana said. "Keep going. Don't wait for someone to say you're ready." She handed the girl a tiny folded card with her Instagram handle. "DM me your next design," she said. Later, she stepped outside for air. The gallery's front steps overlooked a line of food carts, taxis, and sidewalk vendors. She was staring at the street when a voice said, "Luciana Reyes?" She turned. A man in his 30s, salt and pepper hair, sharp suit, but kind eyes, held out a business card. "Diego Espinoza, Talent Scout, Rising Form Studios. We saw your piece and your story. Would you be interested in visiting our studio next month?" Luciana took the card slowly. "Why me?" He smiled. "Because you're not trying to look like anyone else. You're designing from truth. That's rare." Luciana stared at the name. Studio, opportunity, possibility. That night, back home, she hung the dress carefully in the closet. Her sketchbook lay open beside her bed. But instead of sketching, she wrote, "This is how it begins, not with a runway, not with applause, but with a needle and a name." She closed the book, and for the first time in her life, she believed her name would be enough. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat on Luciana's laptop screen. 2 emails, 2 lives, 2 futures. She reread the first message, the one from Rising Form Studios in Los Angeles. "Luciana, we were thrilled by your showcase piece and would like to offer you a full scholarship to our 6-week summer design mentorship. The program includes housing, materials, and one-on-one guidance from top creatives in the industry. We believe you have the potential to shape the future of fashion. We'd love to be part of your journey. Sincerely, Diego Espinoza." Luciana leaned back, breath stuck somewhere in her ribs. She had barely spoken the words, "LA," aloud since the message arrived 2 days ago. It felt like a dream someone else had been handed by mistake. Then she clicked open the second email. This one was from Elena. "Luciana, I hope you've had time to rest since the showcase. I have something brewing here. A community-based collection. All local, all cultural, storytelling through clothing. I want you on the team. Paid and credited. We'll work from the Bronx. We'll make something honest. Let me know if your heart's still here." Luciana stared at the screen for a long time. What do you do when both paths are open, but they pull in opposite directions? She found Carmen in the kitchen, chopping onions for a arroz con pollo. "Mom," she said, voice tight, "can I talk to you?" Carmen looked up. One glance told her everything. She wiped her hands on a towel. "LA or home?" Luciana nodded. "Both amazing. Both terrifying." Carmen sat. "Tell me what you're thinking." Luciana sighed. "LA is big, professional. It opens doors I've never even touched. But Alina's project? It's personal. It's who I am." "Are you afraid of leaving?" Carmen asked. "Yes, But I'm also afraid of not leaving. Of missing something. Carmen leaned forward, eyes gentle. Let me tell you something about doors. Mija, they don't open only once. You just have to be brave enough to knock when it's time. Luciana blinked. LA won't disappear. Carmen added, neither will your roots. The question is, which version of yourself are you ready to grow into right now? Later that day, Luciana walked the streets of the Bronx alone. Past the stoop where she used to read fashion magazines she couldn't afford. Past Valerio's bakery, where she saved tip money in an envelope marked Prom. Past the mural of Celia Cruz that reminded everyone on the block, La Vida es un carnaval. She ended up outside Elena's shop. Elena was pinning a hem on a mannequin when she looked up and saw Luciana standing outside. She opened the door without a word. I need to talk, Luciana said. I figured. They sat at the long cutting table. Luciana explained both offers, the conflict, the weight of it all. Elena listened patiently. You know, she said, you remind me of myself at your age. Except braver. Luciana smiled faintly. Let me ask you something. Elena continued. If both options disappeared tomorrow, which one would you regret not doing? Luciana didn't speak right away. But the answer formed in her chest before it ever reached her lips. L.A., she whispered. Elena nodded. Then go, and don't apologize for it. But what about your project? Luciana asked. What about the Bronx? Elena shrugged. We're not going anywhere. You'll bring the Bronx with you. We'll still be here when you're ready to build. That night, Luciana sat at her desk, staring at the blinking cursor again. She opened a new message window and typed, Dear Mr. Espinoza, thank you, I accept. Then she hit send, and with it, the beginning of a new life. Over the next few days, Luciana began packing her things. The Rising Form Studios program would start in 2 weeks. She'd never been to California, never flown alone, never lived outside New York. But somehow, it didn't feel like leaving home. It felt like expanding it. Carmen gifted her a new sewing kit, leather-bound, filled with sharpened needles, threads, measuring tape, and one tucked note that read, Use these to build, not to mend. Tia Rosa mailed her a silver charm, a tiny sewing machine with Luciana engraved on its base. And from Elena, a single bolt of fabric, lavender satin. This, her note read, is for the next girl you help find herself. On the day of her flight, Luciana stood outside their building, suitcase in one hand, sketchbook in the other. A small group had gathered, Anna, Juliet, even Ms. Ellison from school. Ryan showed up last, slightly breathless, holding a paper bag. He handed it to her. Guava pastries. For the plane. Luciana laughed. You're getting good at goodbyes. I hope not, he said. I'd rather get good at hellos. She hugged him, grateful, warm, then stepped into the waiting cab. As it pulled away, she looked out the window one last time. The Bronx didn't look smaller. It looked like a starting line. The first thing Luciana noticed about Los Angeles was the light. It wasn't like the Bronx, diffused by scaffolding, tinted by subway grime, or filtered through rusted fire escapes. No LA light was wide open, golden and shameless, painting everything it touched with a soft glow of possibility. She stood outside LAX with her carry-on, her sketchbook tucked under one arm, and her heart pounding like it had somewhere to be before she did. A shuttle arrived, sleek and white, marked with the Rising Form Studios logo. She climbed in. As the city blurred past the window, palm trees swaying, low hills glowing in the afternoon haze, Luciana whispered to herself, This isn't the top. It's the climb. The studios were located in a renovated art space downtown, all glass walls, polished concrete floors, and wide open ceilings. Luciana stepped in with 12 other designers, each of them hand-picked. Talented, ambitious. They came from prep schools, creative academies, and private portfolios with agents. Luciana came from the Bronx. She noticed it right away. The expensive fabrics some carried, the shoes that cost more than her prom dress, the confident posture of kids who had grown up being told they belonged in rooms like this. And for a flicker of a moment, the doubt crept in. Maybe she had come too far. Maybe this was above her. But then she touched the zipper on her carry-on, the one holding the lavender dress, and remembered, I didn't come here to blend in. I came to show them where I'm from. The program began with a whirlwind, design exercises, fabric selection challenges, technical assessments. Their mentor, René Lacroix, a French-American designer known for fusing streetwear with haute couture, walked the group through expectations. You are not here to copy. You are not here to impress me, she said sharply. You are here to dig, to reveal, to take your insides and sew them outside. Luciana felt something flicker in her chest. A memory of her mother's voice. Soft and clear. You don't sew to fix things. You sew to declare who you are. That night, Luciana stayed late after orientation, sketching alone at a corner drafting table. She didn't want to make something pretty. She wanted to make something true. Not everyone was welcoming. Isla Rivera, a girl with sleek braids and a portfolio full of clean lines and cool sarcasm, eyed Luciana with thinly veiled skepticism. You're the prom girl, right? She asked on day 2, glancing at Luciana's sewing kit. Luciana looked up. I guess. Isla smirked. Cute story. Let's see if it sews. Luciana gave her a tight smile. That's the plan. But not everyone was a rival. Miles, a tall, soft-spoken boy from Atlanta who layered oversized cardigans and loved mismatching patterns, offered a genuine smile when Luciana helped him troubleshoot a sleeve seam. You've got rhythm in your hands, he said, like you hear the garment before it speaks. Luciana chuckled. I think that's just Bronx instinct. By week 2, the final project was announced. Each designer had to create a signature piece that blended their personal identity with a bold statement about the future of fashion. You have 10 days, René said. Make it count. Luciana stared at her blank workspace that night, chewing the end of a pencil. Everyone else seemed to already have a vision, mood boards, digital renderings, stacks of fabric. Meanwhile, she sat staring at a blank page, until she remembered the note. The silver envelope. She pulled it from her sketchbook. You don't need permission to be unforgettable. The words stirred something deeper than nostalgia. They stirred intention. Her design began as a silhouette, a reimagined version of her prom dress, but evolved, stronger, wiser. She used layers of translucent mesh over structured canvas, symbolic of strength revealed through vulnerability. The hem was asymmetrical, inspired by the uneven sidewalks of her childhood. Across the bodice, she embroidered a map of the Bronx, stitched in silver thread. She called it inheritance. It wasn't just a garment. It was her origin story. As the days passed, Luciana worked relentlessly. She slept little, bled her thumb twice, spilled coffee on a sleeve and had to resew it from scratch. But still, she kept going. Some nights she cried. Other nights she laughed until she ached, swapping stories with Miles and humming old Celia Cruz songs under her breath. Even Isla softened slightly. This piece, Isla said one evening, studying Luciana's half-finished work. It makes me uncomfortable. Luciana raised an eyebrow. Good. Isla nodded. Good. The final presentation day arrived. Each designer would present their piece in front of the mentors, a small audience of local industry professionals, and several scouts from design houses. Luciana stood backstage, palms sweaty, dress draped over the mannequin beside her. When it was her turn, she wheeled the piece into the spotlight, cleared her throat, and began. My name is Luciana Reyes. I was raised in the Bronx by women who used thread like power and fabric like language. This piece is called Inheritance. It's about visibility, history, and building a future without forgetting where you started. She stepped back. Silence. Then, applause. Slow at first, then steady, then real. After the presentation, René approached her. You speak with fabric the way some people write poetry, she said. Luciana flushed. I just try to tell the truth. René handed her a card. It wasn't for a scholarship or a job. It was for a feature. Rising Voices. Young designers to watch. September issue interview request. Luciana Reyes. Luciana stared at the words. She didn't cry. She smiled. That night, she stood on the rooftop of the studio, looking west. The skyline behind her, the stars above her, and somewhere far away, her home, still holding space for her return. She opened her sketchbook and drew the first page of a new collection. Across the top, in bold, careful script, she wrote, Built from the Bronx, designed for the world.